This is Connect with Skip Heitzig. We are glad to have you join us today for this time of Bible teaching with Skip as we present the message, The Darkness of a Broken Family. We began this message on our last program. Here is an outline of our review of 1 Samuel chapter 24. Blemished is better than broken. Respect is better than revenge. Light is better than darkness. And finally, truth is better than triumph. You can always find Skip's message outlines like this, as well as study guides for what you see here from Skip. Just look under Teachings at connectwithskip.com. That's where you will find a treasure of messages and resources by Skip Heitzig. Now, let's return to 1 Samuel chapter 24 as we join Skip for the conclusion of The Darkness of a Broken Family.
Here's a third tip I would just say, make the first move. Don't sit in the corner with your arms folded and saying, well, I'm going to wait for them to call me. Make the first move. Man up or woman up. Go deal with it. Be the first to make the move. Jesus said in Matthew 18, if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault just between the two of you. If he listens, you have won your brother over. So, blemished is way better than broken. That's the first principle. Second principle, respect is better than revenge. Now I want to show you how David handles this. So here's his father-in-law coming to get him. 3,000 men in the army of Saul. David has 600 men, so he's outnumbered 5-1. Saul finds David down in En-Gedi. There are many, many caves in that area. And look at verse 3. We come to a scene that it really is a funny scene. It's a humorous scriptural pericope or a little word study. Verse 3 says, so he came to the sheepfolds by the road where there was a cave, and Saul went in to attend to his needs. Now, you understand that, right? He has to use the restroom. David and his men were staying in the recesses of the cave. So, Saul's hunting his son-in-law, has to use the bathroom, goes into the bathroom not knowing there are 600 men in it already, hiding. So he goes into the recesses of the cave. Then the men of David said to him, this is the day of which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand, that you may do to him as seems good to you. And David arose and secretly cut off a corner of Saul's robe. This is the first time in the hunt of Saul against David where Saul is this vulnerable, this defenseless. Can you picture it? You can picture it. Saul's in the cave, in the shadow, sitting over there on his haunches, taking care of business, staring outside the cave. David comes sneaking up from behind, snip, takes a corner of the robe. Now it happened, verse 5 afterward, that David's heart troubled him because he had cut Saul's robe. Now we kind of laugh at that. I'm sure his men laughed at that. They're thinking, cut his robe? Man, cut his throat. He's been trying to kill you. End this madness. This is what the Lord did for you. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master. Here's the respect. The Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing that he is the anointed of the Lord. So David restrained his servants with these words and did not allow them to rise up against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. This is David's golden opportunity. That's what his men are trying to tell him. God delivered him into your hands, dude. Don't you see this? This is a sign from God. It's funny how people see certain things as signs from God. Their car stalls, so they think it's a sign from God to buy a new car. A girl smiles at him. This is God's sign. This is the one I'm going to marry. Dude, it's just a smile. Get over it. Men say, this is a sign from God for you to take revenge. Revenge is easy. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. People do that all day long. And I'll say this, revenge is fun. When you are driving and you know those drivers who cut you off and then give you a sign, right? The one-way sign, only a different finger. They do that and they feel vindicated. They feel, you got yours, man. They feel good about it. They enjoy that. I heard about a woman who worked for a family. She was a maid. She cleaned the dishes, made their food, took the kids to school. She was employed by the family. The family fired her. Let her go. And she was so upset by that because it was her whole life. That job, that employment was everything to her. So she was very misunderstanding of why this happened. Family said, don't want to talk about it, pack your bags, hit the road, open the door, pushed her out. Before she left, she took out a $5 bill and threw it to the dog, the family dog. And the family said, well, why would you do that? She says, I never forget a friend. That's for all the times your dog helped me do your dishes. It felt so good to say that to them. David wouldn't do it. David chose respect rather than revenge. He even felt guilty about snipping his robe. Respect. Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me. I'll tell you what it meant to David. Don't touch the man. That's God's anointed. It's interesting, soldiers are taught to salute their commanding officer even if they hate him. And they'll say, it's because you salute the rank, not the man. No matter how you feel personally about that person, you always salute the rank. Here is David saluting the rank. You're the king of Israel. For some reason, God raised you up. I'm not going to touch God's anointed. That's respect. And respect is better than revenge. Let me just make a quick plea to parents of young children. Please teach your kids respect. There's no excuse for disrespect. I see kids in some stores, I want to spank them. Don't worry, I won't. But please teach your children to respect you as parents. If they don't respect you, they will not respect teachers, they will not respect police. You teach them that this is a civil society and every human being deserves respect. There was one man who said, when I was a kid, there was no respect for youth. Now that I'm old, there's no respect for age. He said, I missed it coming and going. Well, the way to get it is to give it. Be a person who decides, when I meet another person, I'm going to treat them with respect. So respect is better than revenge. That's the second. The third principle to resolving conflict is this. Light is better than darkness. Light is better than darkness. Let me explain. Look at verse 8. David also arose afterward, he's in the darkness of the cave, and went out of the cave and called out to Saul, saying, my Lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David stooped with his face to the earth and he bowed down. What I want you to see is this. David and Saul were both in the darkness of the cave. David did nothing in the darkness of the cave, waited till Saul walked out in the light, broad daylight. And David went out in the light, broad daylight, and they could see each other and they could communicate in the light rather than in the darkness. David does nothing in the darkness of the cave for two reasons. Number one, that's God's anointed. I won't touch him. Number two, anything done in the dark of the cave would be less than optimal. Hear me on this. Anything done in the darkness of the cave would be less than optimal. Number one, he could have killed Saul in that dark cave. Number two, he could have just scared Saul. He could have just held a knife to his throat. You know who you're dealing with, dude? And forced a resolution or forced a confession. But he didn't do it. He waited till Saul got out. Then he also went out in broad daylight. Now, if you're thinking I'm making too much of this fact, I don't think I am. And here's why. I was reading this week Story of a man who used to go to a lot of bars and a lot of nightclubs, and that was his past lifestyle. And he said, I always noticed when I went to bars, they were always dark, because you never see a very well-lit bar. And nightclubs are always dark. And he goes, I try to just figure out, why are they always dark rather than well-lit? And he said, it's because it makes people less aware of themselves, less self-conscious. So he said this, darkness hides things. One is more inclined to approach a woman at night in a jam-packed room with loud music than in broad daylight in a quiet coffee shop. It's because self-consciousness is low or absent completely. Darkness heightens anonymity. The mask of darkness allows one to act other than themselves. In other words, darkness helps me be dishonest with people. Light does something different. Now, do you know that 55% of communication, when you have a conversation with a person, 55% of communication comes through facial expressions? 55%. It is estimated that between 70 and 90% of all communication is body language, facial expression, and then what you do with your arms, your legs, your posture, all of that. 70 to 90% of total communication comes from body language and facial expression, and very little comes from the words. So, tightness around the mouth and eyes, lowered eyebrows, frowning, scowling, glaring, sweating, crossed arms, all of that communicates anger and disapproval. On the other hand, relaxed muscles, gently closed mouth, slow breathing, arms uncrossed, low, steady tones of voice, that communicates reassurance and a desire to resolve. You can't see that in the dark. You can't see that in a text. You can't see that in an email. Heck, you can't even see that in a phone call. All you're getting is tone of voice, but most of the communication is lost. The best way to resolve conflict is not to social media or instant message or text or email somebody. It's let's have face-to-face where I can see your expressions and you can see mine in a well-lit environment. Light is better than darkness. So blemished is better than broken. Respect is better than revenge. Light is better than darkness. And I'm going to close with a fourth. Truth is better than triumph. Truth is better than triumph. David has an end game in this. He is going to confront Saul in broad daylight with the truth, because it needs to be said, but his goal isn't to win an argument. His goal is to win Saul's friendship. It's to win Saul over, not to say, I won, I triumphed. So truth is better than triumph. Look at verse 9. David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men who say, indeed, David seeks your harm? Look, this day your eyes have seen. That's nonverbal communication. Your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you today into my hand in the cave. And somebody urged me to kill you, but my eyes spared you. And I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see, yes, see the corner of your robe in my hand. Wouldn't get that in a text. For in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. No, and see that there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand. And I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me, and let the Lord avenge me on you, but my hand shall not be against you. In verse 16, so it was, when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, that Saul said, is this your voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. And he said to David, you are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. And you have shown this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hand, you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore, may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. That's what David was after. So, though David respected Saul, wouldn't touch him because he's the Lord's anointed, wouldn't exact revenge, though David has a sensitive conscience, even when he cuts off a little piece of his robe, David still felt he needed to confront Saul with truth. He didn't stay in the back of the cave saying, I'm not going to move, I'll just let Saul move on. He'll never know that I was in the cave. David felt the urgency for an honest confrontation with Saul. And that's important. Jesus said, if your brother sins against you, go tell him your fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. That's honest confrontation. Proverbs 27, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. An enemy will stab you in the back. A friend will stab you in the front. Carefully, lovingly, gingerly, strategically, but will tell you to your face, bro, dude, this is what I see. This is what's going on. You need to hear this. Sometimes people need to be confronted with the truth because truth is better than triumph. Later on, David will be confronted by Nathan the prophet. After his affair, the prophet will say, you are the man. That's honest confrontation. Some of you, when you hear that, you cringe. The idea of confrontation to you is like avoid it at all costs. You hate confrontation. Most people hate confrontation. I hate confrontation. Only people with a screw loose love confrontation. There's a few of them out there. But most people don't like it. But listen. Conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. Sometimes if you just let things go and don't deal with them, they will get bigger and meaner and out of control. Conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. It's confrontation that will stop the conflict. You want to stop the conflict? Get somebody eye to eye and say, okay, let's have it out. Let's deal with this. Let's talk it through. And let's come to a resolution. And so David felt the necessity to do that. He may not have wanted to. He may have wanted to kill Saul. But he said no to that. But I still have to let him know. Here's your robe. Could have killed you. Decided not to. The man wept and said, you are more righteous than I am. That is truth, winning the day. One of my favorite stories about one of my favorite people, Corrie ten Boom. She was in a concentration camp for years. Her family hid Jewish people. The Nazis discovered them, put these girls in concentration camps. I think they were in 3 different ones. After they were released from the camps, Corrie ten Boom went around and spoke in different churches. She spoke in my church and told her story years ago. And one of her stories, and it's so good because it's true, is she was out and she was speaking at a church in Europe, and somebody came up to her, a man came up that he recognized and stuck his hand out to shake her hand. And she recognized him. She goes, that is one of the prison guards who was like the cruelest, most inhumane prison guard in one of the Nazi prison camps, who comes up to her and wants to shake her hand, asking for forgiveness. He said, will you forgive me? This is what she writes. I stood there with coldness, clutching at my heart. But I know that the will can function regardless of the temperature of the heart. So I prayed, Jesus, help me. Now listen to this. Woodenly, mechanically, I thrust out my hand into the one stretched out to me, and I experienced an incredible thing. A warm reconciliation seemed to flood my whole being. I forgive you. I forgive you. For a long moment, we grasped each other's hands, the former guard, the former prisoner. I have never known the love of God so intensely as I did at that moment. To forgive, she writes, is to set a prisoner free and to discover that the prisoner was you. When you decide, even mechanically, to respectfully, lovingly confront people with truth and say, I am willing to reconcile and to forgive so that the blemished family doesn't become the broken family, the blemished relationship doesn't become the busted relationship. I'm willing to do that. You are set free. The prisoner is set free. Some of you feel broken today. Some of you would even admit, I have a broken marriage or I have a broken family. Well, the good news is you're in the right place because that's God's territory. God loves broken things. You know, in the world, when things get broken, you know what we do? Throw them away. That plate's broken, throw it away. Nobody glues it and uses it for dinner. Throw it away. We throw away things that are broken. We unfortunately do that with relationships, with marriages. Marriage is broken. Throw it away. Get a new one. God does not. God seems to love broken things. Seems to love broken people because broken people come to a place where they go, I can't fix me. It seems like nobody can fix me. And God says, well, you know what? I can. I'm really good at this. This is like my specialty. The Bible says the sacrifices of God are a broken heart, a broken and contrite spirit, O Lord, you will not despise. So you're in the right place because the Bible is full of broken people that God uses. You know, it's funny, people will say, I could never be like those people in the Bible. Have you ever read the Bible? These people are all jacked up, right? They're all messed up. And that's the story of redemption. That's what God does. He takes the broken things and the broken families and the broken marriages and the broken people and says, you're going to be a testimony for my glory. So you're in the right place. And I just want to say this, you don't have to be fixed to be a follower. He calls you as you are. Well, I'll get my act together, then I'll come to Christ. No, don't. You can't. Just admit that you need him and that you need his help. You don't have to be fixed to be a follower, but you come to him as a follower and he's going to fix you. He's going to fix you up.
That's Skip Heitzig speaking to the difficult topic of a broken family in this message from the Darkroom series. As Skip said, David chose to deal with Saul in the light of day rather than in the darkness of a cave. Think about why light is always critical to genuine face-to-face communication, since an estimated 80% of communication is nonverbal. We'll continue the Darkroom series on our next broadcast of Connect with Skip Heitzig, when we will look at the time when society goes dark. For this month, we have a special resource offer that speaks to the issue of dealing with times when our path of life takes a turn. It's called Pivot Points, and it addresses times of transition, crisis, and change that can also be an opportunity to alter our spiritual direction.
Our lives are punctuated by defining moments, pivot points that shape who we are now and who we'll become, such as choice of marriage partner or where we choose to work, as Skip Heitzig observes.
There's predictable events that happens like in your life, but every now and then life sort of hits you by surprise. It comes crashing down on you. You don't expect things to happen that happen. You are going a direction, your day is planned out, but you get a phone call from a doctor or a friend. The news is not good, the prognosis is not good, and you didn't see it coming.
God's Word has the direction to get you through the planned and unplanned pivot points in your life.
A faith that cannot be tested is a faith that cannot be trusted.
The Pivot Point package speaks to marriage, death, depression, recovery, fear of the future, and moving to a new location or job. Get these teachings that include written personal direction from Skip on each of these topics. You'll receive this package when you give $50 or more today to this Bible teaching ministry. We'll send you Pastor Skip's Pivot Points collection of 6 messages, plus an encouraging letter from Pastor Skip so you can strengthen your faith in defining moments. Get these critical Pivot Point messages today when you give online securely at connectwithskip.com/offer or call 800-922-1888.
When life brings us unsettling change, it can be a time of openness to take biblical principles seriously. Pivot Points would be a great package for you to be encouraged by, and I'm sure you know someone who is facing the challenges of a new marriage, lost loved one, or perhaps depression. Pivot Points speaks to these and other times of transition. Order one for yourself and for a friend for a donation of $50 or more for each set. To receive your package, call now 1-800-922-1888 or check in at connectwithskip.com. That is 1-800-922-1888 or click in at connectwithskip.com. And remember, when you order resources from this ministry, any extra finances you provide will help us to continue to expand our reach of these Bible messages. And join us next time for more Bible teaching from Skip Heitzig to find more helpful instruction in our Darkroom series. Thanks for joining us on Connect with Skip Heitzig. We're connecting you to God's never-changing truth in ever-changing times. This program is brought to you by Connection Communications.